April 14th, 1865. Good Friday. 5 days after Robert E. Lee surrendered at Appomattox Court House, effectively ending the Civil War that tore America apart for 4 years, President Abraham Lincoln wakes in the White House, exhausted but relieved. The war is over. 620,000 Americans died, the bloodiest conflict in the nation's history. But the Union is preserved. Slavery is abolished. Lincoln's life work is complete. That afternoon, he tells his bodyguard William Crook, "Goodbye, Crook." Not good night as usual, but goodbye. Crook will remember that word forever. At 8:30 p.m., Lincoln and his wife Mary arrive at Ford's Theater on 10th Street to watch a comedy called Our American Cousin. They're joined by Major Henry Rathbone and his fiancée Clara Harris. Lincoln needs to laugh. He wants to celebrate with ordinary citizens. The theater is packed. 1,700 people. The president settles into the rocking chair in the presidential box, draped with American flags. Below him, the play unfolds. Nobody notices the famous actor lurking backstage with a Derringer pistol and a knife. John Wilkes Booth learned of Lincoln's theater plans that morning while picking up his mail at Ford's Theater. He's a 26-year-old stage actor from Maryland's most celebrated theatrical family. His brother Edwin is America's most famous Shakespearean actor, a staunch Unionist. John is the opposite. He's a Confederate sympathizer who never fought for the South, but hates Lincoln with consuming passion. The president destroyed everything Booth loved: the Confederacy, slavery, the Southern way of life. For months, Booth plotted to kidnap Lincoln and deliver him to the South. Now, with Lee's surrender, that plan is useless. Kidnapping won't save a defeated cause. Only assassination can avenge it. Booth spends April 14th assembling conspirators. Lewis Powell, a powerful ex-Confederate soldier, will murder Secretary of State William Seward at his home. George Atzerodt will kill Vice President Andrew Johnson at the Kirkwood House Hotel. Booth himself will shoot Lincoln. By eliminating the 3 most important Union officials simultaneously, Booth believes he can decapitate the government and throw the North into chaos. Perhaps the South can somehow rise again. It's a desperate fantasy. But Booth is beyond reason. Around 10 p.m., Booth enters Ford's Theater through the back door. He knows the building intimately. He's performed here many times. He walks upstairs toward the presidential box, carrying a single-shot Derringer pistol loaded with a .69 caliber lead ball and a Rio Grande camp knife with a 7.5-inch blade. Lincoln's bodyguard, John Parker, should be stationed outside the box. But Parker is bored. He's abandoned his post to watch the play from the dress circle, or perhaps to drink at the tavern next door. The door to the presidential box is unguarded. Booth slips inside the narrow hallway behind the box. He braces a wooden stick against the door, jamming it so no one can enter. Then he waits. He knows the play. He's timed his attack to a particular line that always gets huge laughs. The audience's roar will mask his gunshot. 10:15 p.m. Actor Harry Hawk delivers the play's funniest line. "Don't know the manners of good society, eh? Well, I guess I know enough to turn you inside out, old gal. You a sock-dologizing old man-trap." The audience explodes in laughter. 1,700 people roaring at the absurd insult. In that moment, Booth steps into the presidential box. Lincoln sits in his rocking chair, holding Mary's hand, laughing at the play. Booth raises the Derringer, aims at the back of Lincoln's head from 3 feet away, fires. The single shot enters behind Lincoln's left ear, travels through his brain diagonally, and lodges behind his right eye. Lincoln slumps forward, unconscious. He never makes a sound. Major Rathbone, sitting across the box, leaps at Booth. Booth drops the derringer and slashes Rathbone's arm with the knife, cutting deep into the Major's flesh. Then Booth vaults over the railing, attempting a dramatic stage escape. His spur catches on the Treasury Guard flag draped over the box. He falls awkwardly, landing on the stage and breaking the fibula in his left leg. But adrenaline carries him. He stands, faces the shocked audience, and shouts the Virginia state motto, "Sic semper tyrannis," thus always to tyrants. Then he adds, "The South is avenged." He limps off stage, mounts his waiting horse in the alley, and disappears into the night. Ford's Theater erupts in chaos. Women scream, men shout. Dr. Charles Leal, a young Army surgeon sitting in the dress circle, rushes to the presidential box. He finds Lincoln unconscious, barely breathing. The wound is mortal. Leal knows immediately. Moving the president could kill him instantly. But they can't leave him in the theater. Soldiers carry Lincoln across 10th Street to a boarding house owned by William Peterson, a cheap lodging house where tailor Henry Safford rents a room. They place Lincoln diagonally across Safford's too-short bed. His 6'4" frame doesn't fit. For 9 hours, Lincoln lingers. His breaths grow shallower. Blood slowly pools in his brain. Mary sits beside him, occasionally bursting into hysterical sobs. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton conducts the government from the next room, taking witness statements, organizing the manhunt, ensuring continuity of power. At 7:22 a.m. on April 15th, Lincoln's breathing stops. Dr. Leal checks for a pulse. Nothing. Stanton speaks the words that will echo through history. Now he belongs to the ages. Meanwhile, the other assassinations fail catastrophically. Lewis Powell forces his way into William Seward's home around 10:10 p.m. Seward is bedridden, recovering from a carriage accident. Powell brutally beats Seward's son Frederick with a revolver, then slashes the secretary's face and throat multiple times with a Bowie knife. But Seward is wearing a surgical splint protecting his jaw from the carriage accident. The metal device deflects Powell's blade. Seward's other son, Augustus, and a State Department messenger fight Powell off. The secretary survives, scarred, but alive. George Atzerodt completely loses his nerve. He's supposed to shoot Vice President Johnson at the Kirkwood House, but instead spends the evening getting drunk at the hotel bar. He asks the bartender about Johnson's character, then wanders into the streets and throws away his knife. By 2 a.m., he's sleeping in a rented room. The conspiracy has achieved only one goal, killing Lincoln. But that's enough to throw the nation into trauma. The manhunt for Booth becomes the largest in American history to that point. A $100,000 reward is offered, equivalent to over $2 million today. Troops flood Maryland and Virginia. Booth and David Herold, a co-conspirator who joined him, hide for days in a thicket near Zakiah Swamp in Maryland. Booth's broken leg is treated by Dr. Samuel Mudd, who will later be convicted of conspiracy, though his descendants will spend over a century trying to prove his innocence. Booth keeps a diary during his flight, recording his shock at universal condemnation. He expected to be hailed as a hero, the man who avenged the South. Instead, even Southerners denounce him. The Confederacy is dead. Booth killed Lincoln too late to change anything. 12 days after the assassination, on April 26th, Union cavalry corners Booth and Herold in a tobacco barn near Port Royal, Virginia. Herold surrenders. Booth refuses. Soldiers set the barn on fire to force him out. Sergeant Boston Corbett, possibly violating orders to take Booth alive, shoots through gaps in the barn's wooden slats. The bullet strikes Booth in the neck, paralyzing him. Soldiers drag him from the burning barn. He dies 3 hours later on the porch of the nearby Garrett farm, reportedly whispering, "Useless, useless," as his final words. His body is identified, then buried in a storage room at Washington Arsenal. 8 co-conspirators are tried by military tribunal. Mary Surratt, Lewis Powell, David Herold, and George Atzerodt are hanged on July 7, 1865. 3 others receive life sentences. One gets 6 years. Lincoln's funeral becomes the largest mourning event in American history. His body lies in state at the White House, then the Capitol Rotunda, where 100,000 people file past his open casket. A funeral train carries him home to Illinois, stopping in cities along the way. 7 states, 1,444 miles. 7 million people, nearly 1/4 of the Union's population, view the train or attend memorial services. The outpouring of grief is unprecedented. Lincoln wasn't universally loved during his presidency, but death transforms him into a martyr. The president who preserved the Union and freed the slaves dies just as victory is achieved. The timing is unbearably tragic. He led the nation through its darkest hour, but never got to see the peace. Vice President Andrew Johnson is sworn in as president on April 15th, beginning one of the most chaotic presidencies in American history. Johnson, a Southern Democrat chosen to balance the Republican ticket, lacks Lincoln's political skill and moral authority. He battles Congress over Reconstruction. He pardons former Confederates Lincoln might have punished. He opposes civil rights legislation Lincoln would have supported. He becomes the first president impeached by the House, though the Senate acquits him by 1 vote. Many historians believe Lincoln's assassination changed American history's trajectory. Would Lincoln have achieved reconciliation between North and South? Would he have protected freed slaves more effectively? Would Reconstruction have succeeded under his leadership? We'll never know. Booth's bullet didn't just kill a president. It killed possibilities. Ford's Theater closed immediately after the assassination. When owner John Ford tried reopening it 3 months later, Secretary of War Stanton had it seized and converted into government offices. In 1893, part of the building's interior flooring collapsed, killing 22 people. It remained a warehouse and office building until 1932, when the first floor became a Lincoln Museum. Finally, in 1968, 103 years after the assassination, Ford's Theater reopened as a working theater. Today it's a National Historic Site. Our American Cousin has never been performed there again, and never will be. April 14th, 1865, transformed a comedy into a tragedy, a president into a martyr, and a moment of celebration into a national catastrophe. Lincoln died at his moment of victory, shot in a theater while watching a play, killed by an actor who believed murder could save a dying cause. The Civil War ended 5 days before the assassination. The war's aftermath, Reconstruction's failures, the betrayal of freed slaves, the century of segregation and racial violence, began the moment that bullet entered Lincoln's brain. One shot changed everything. That's the legacy of Good Friday, 1865, the night America lost its president just when it needed him most.